Hi everyone, I'm Dr.Animaction. Welcome to the second part of the 1999 coverage in my animated 90s series. Before we get started, since it's the season of giving and because I don't mention them very often, I just want to take a quick second for self-promotion and mention both my book and my 80s and 90s swag. If anyone is a fan of contemporary fiction or fantasy, the book may be of interest, and you can read a sample chapter on my website, linked in the video description. As for the others, I've got several different designs inspired by 80s and 90s animation and pop culture to check out for the geeks in your life, also linked down below. But that's all I wanted to say about that, so let's get back on track and pick up where we left off in 1999. Well, unfortunately, this won't be a very strong start to the video for most of you, but I still feel like it's important to at least mention all of the shows that came out each year geared towards the very young, and there were a decent number of them for this video. Go ahead and jump to this time if you want to skip over them. I wouldn't blame you. Let's get the uncomfortable elephant in the room out of the way right off the bat, though, as this year brought preschoolers Little Bill, based on a book series by a formerly beloved actor whom we really don't even need to address, let alone discuss. Ignoring the source and looking only at the series, though, it was a pretty nice little show that followed 5-year-old Bill Glover Jr., not the other Bill, through his daily life experiences and adventurous daydreams as he learned various lessons. The series ran for 2 seasons on Nickelodeon for a total of 52 episodes. Next up here is the series from HBO Family called Anthony Ant, which is set in an underground ant city where the main character and his family work in a museum and help other ant citizens solve ant problems created by the wicked Count Mosquito, while learning lessons of varying degrees of usefulness. Could you guess that this series came out in the wake of the movies Ants and A Bug's Life? Well, yeah. It lasted for a single 27 15-minute episode season. Moving this category along, we come to a show called George and Martha, which is actually based on a series of kids' books by James Marshall that started in 1972. The series is about a couple of hippos named, George and Martha.
Why did you say that name?
And aims to teach kids about different aspects of friendship through a series of fairly mundane activities. There's honestly not much else to say about this one. It aired for 26 episodes over 2 seasons. Speaking of HBO Family, they premiered a second series for the little kiddos this year called A Little Curious as well. In this one, a cast of anthropomorphic household items are animated using various techniques in anthology episodes, each focusing on a single topic, or set of topics, which usually take the form of various adjectives. It lasted for 2 seasons and clocked in at 43 episodes. Oh, and the theme was performed by the Manhattan Transfer, which is a name I'm sure at least some of you recognize. Let's leave HBO, though, and shift our focus to preschool channel Noggin, which launched a series this year called Fred on Your Head. Thankfully not that Fred. The pretext of this show was that the main character, Fred, lived inside the dot of the noggin.com URL, and the show encouraged kids to visit the website. It was kind of an early commenter engagement, and Fred would answer fan questions and read comments submitted on the site in future episodes. It started with an hour-long format, and then tried running for a few months as 2 hours, eventually becoming a regular 30-minute series, which I guess also sometimes concurrently aired with hour-long episodes. I have no idea how many total episodes that represents, or in what configuration, so sorry about that. Fortunately for me, I doubt that many of you watching this really care. Finally though, we'll end this category with a brand new PBS series from the Children's Television Workshop, one of the last they made before changing names to Sesame Workshop. Dragon Tales followed human siblings Emmy and Max upon finding a magical dragon scale that could transport them to Dragon Land. Once there, they befriend several dragon natives and help them overcome struggles and obstacles in their lives, yada yada. The series lasted for 94 episodes during its initial 3-season run. Welcome back to those of you who skipped the preceding section. You're just in time to hear me talk about some shows that may or may not have aired this year, or, even existed at all. The first of these is one I only found a single mention of as an uncited reference here on Wikipedia. Normally, without a citation, I'd dismiss it outright, but for the sake of being thorough, I figured I'd mention it here. On that site, it mentions a series called The Judy Show from Hanna-Barbera, but I see no other mention of it anywhere online, and therefore tend to believe it doesn't actually exist. Like I said though, I wanted to bring it up in case it does, and if in fact it does exist, someone out there can hopefully provide some details about it. This is a good lesson for everyone watching, though, that if something on Wikipedia can't be verified, then it's probably not accurate. And if it can be verified, you're better off citing the original source. Sorry, the college teacher in me came out for a minute. Let's move on to something else, specifically a show called Please Save My Earth, which is actually an OVA anime based on a long-running manga series. Did it air here in the US? No idea, but the Absolute Anime website says it did this year on PBS. IMDb, alternatively, says it aired here in 1996, which episosedate.com agrees with, though they don't provide any additional details to go with said date. So yeah, I mentioned it here. It may or may not have been a thing, or I may or may not have put it in the wrong year, but at least I did, in fact, put it on a list. Okay, I feel like I'm quickly starting to lose control of this video, but I'm going to press ahead anyway with the series Weirdos, which is at least one I'm confident saying was on the air this year on Fox Family. It goes in this category though because I just didn't know where else to put it. It's based on a line of models of the same name that were originally released in 1963 by the Hawk Model Company. The models consisted of monster or zombie-looking characters driving an assortment of strange, hyper-stylized vehicles. The show applied the design aesthetic to a slice-of-life type series following the teenaged weirdos Portia and Eddie as they went about their days in the town of Weirdsville. It ran for a single 13-episode season on Fox Family. Finally in this category, we have a show that I almost missed this year, but that I'd never even heard of before working on this episode. It's an animated series adapted from the Ripley's Believe It or Not franchise that originated as a French-Canadian co-production before coming to Fox Family here in the US for its single 26-episode season. The series is nothing at all like the live-action Ripley shows over the years, like the one hosted by Superman, and instead follows a trio of adventurers led by the nephew of the original Ripley of the franchise's name, Robert. Each episode has the three of them venturing to a new place to investigate something that falls into the category of weird or unexplained to document it for the Ripley collection. It's not the strangest basis for a cartoon I've ever heard, but it's pretty close, and definitely not a property I'd have expected an animated series from. And now I'm going to finish part 2 of this year with the largest assortment of cartoons for adults that we've seen yet. We got a full 10 series to cover here, including a pair of the most significant animated shows for adults to this day. Let's begin with a series that only managed to get 6 of its intended 13 episodes aired on FX, called the Dick and Paula Celebrity Special. This was another Squigglevision series, so not one I would have had any interest in. That was about a pair of talk show hosts and their keyboardists interviewing different, famous dead people. I'll have to go back through some of the previous series we've covered over the past couple of decades, because that premise sounds really familiar. Let's stay in the nauseating realm of Squigglevision, though, for another series in this category, with Adult Swim's Home Movies. I remember this show being fairly popular, but again, I just couldn't get past the art style. Of course, I also wasn't really a fan of the show's particular brand of comedy either, so I'll go out on a limb and say I wasn't the target audience. Anyway, this one's about a kid and his friends making movies with a handheld camcorder and the antics they get up to in the process. It ran for 52 episodes over 4 seasons, so it must have had a viewership. One of the show's creators went on to create Bob's Burgers, which, like this and the last series we talked about, starred H. John Benjamin. It's weird because I absolutely love Archer, but learning about what else he's done voices for, I find that I'm not much of a fan of the shows in his filmography. Oh, but one of the other show creators also went on to co-create a show that I do love, Metalocalypse. Oh well, let's continue forward with another Adult Swim series that this year brought with Mission Hill. The 13 episodes of this one are about a trio of roommates and their dog living in the Mission Hill district of the fictional city Cosmopolis. Their lives are disrupted when one of the roommates is forced to take in his nerdy high school-aged younger brother. It was pretty much a standard sitcom in every way, and actually became significantly more popular after its cancellation, like a John Carpenter movie. Let's get away from Adult Swim, though, and look at some of the other networks, like MTV, which also saw a pair of new animated series hit the air this year. The first of these is called Station Zero, and ran for 20 episodes in its one and only season. It's about a quartet of teenagers living in the Bronx and hosting a public access TV show where they watch and comment on videos. It's kind of like an animated Wayne's World for the hip-hop crowd, as it mostly stuck to that specific genre. I'm pretty surprised that it didn't last longer than it did, since it honestly seems like Beavis and Butthead with less stupid, more motivated characters, but maybe the stupidity and sheer randomness of those two is what made them so popular. The other series that premiered on MTV was called Downtown, which ran for an even shorter 13 episodes. This one was pretty much a slice-of-life sitcom about 20-somethings living in New York City. Think Friends, but with an exponentially more diverse cast and a much more urban setting. This is another one that's surprising to have seen canceled so soon, especially since it was even nominated for a Primetime Emmy, but there's a good chance it was a victim of circumstance. I mean, at this point, people still kind of expected MTV to play music, and a lot of times didn't really go there looking for much else. Sadly, this one was short-lived and the channel went in the direction of the Real World and the Road Rules instead, so we get the MTV we have today. The next series that I wanted to mention for the year is actually the first of its type throughout my coverage of these past couple of decades, and was kind of groundbreaking for its era. Happy Tree Friends was a web series at a time when most people were still on dial-up internet, and ran an impressive 94 5-minute or shorter episodes over 5 seasons being produced. Sure, those 5 seasons took over 17 years, mind you, but it's 5 seasons nonetheless. It even got a 13-episode run on G4 in 2006. But here's where it started. I mean, barely. It premiered this year on Christmas Eve and got 2 episodes on the air, or on the net, before the end of the millennium, just scraping by to make this video. The mix of cute and colorful woodland design with over-the-top violence and gore made for a pretty funny combination, though, if you're into that sort of thing. Turning our attention over to UPN, we get an animated adaptation of every office worker's favorite funny because it's true, why am I laughing when this hits so close to home, I'm not crying, you're crying, comic strip Dilbert. This is one of those things you either enjoy because you think it's funny and there's not any way the real world actually works like that, or you enjoy because you live an episode of it every day and you crave that kind of validation, or you just don't get it. The cartoon was a pretty faithful adaptation of the wit and situational absurdity found in the comic and ran for a total of 30 episodes across 2 seasons. It's very much humor that you either relate to or you don't, and if you're in the latter category, then consider yourself lucky. Personally, I've been essentially a direct one-to-one analog of the main character at points throughout my career, so I love and hate this one in equal measures. Let's move on. We'll close this category out by looking at a trio of series that came to Fox this year, starting with The PJs, which was a stop-motion animated series co-created by comedian Eddie Murphy and co-produced by Ron Howard. The show takes place in a housing project and focuses on the building's superintendent named Thurgood, his family, and the various tenants that he interacts with. Like a lot of the others we've talked about in this category, this one was a slice-of-life sitcom mainly dealing with Thurgood's unwillingness to do maintenance or service the building's various dilapidated facilities. The series managed 44 episodes over 3 seasons, supported by Murphy's star power and a theme composed by George Clinton and Quincy Jones III. Also, since it was produced in association with Touchstone Television, that technically makes it Disney's first adult animated series as well. Finally, though, we get to the last 2 new releases of this category and of this video as well, and they're both big. Like, really big. Come back from the dead big, even. In fact, it was tough to choose which one to cover first, but I eventually settled on Pedigree to make that decision. Therefore, the next series that came out this year, and another 90s adult cartoon that proved popular enough to still be on the air today, is Family Guy. You all know this one. It ranks right up there with The Simpsons and South Park as far as recognition and longevity, currently clocking in at more than 400 episodes. Created by animation veteran Seth MacFarlane, and kind of being the launching point for what his career is now, the show is another of those love-it-or-hate-it affairs. It's full of what we can charitably call inappropriate humor, no-holds-barred social commentary, and completely meaningless filler scenes. You're either going to be highly amused or highly offended by it, if not both simultaneously in equal measures. Regardless of your stance on the series, though, you can't argue its impact or longevity. And that, of course, brings us to our final entry for this video, and the only one that could not only give Family Guy a run for its money, but even beat it based on the strength of its ancestry, seeing as it's a descendant of the all-powerful Simpsons. I am, of course, referring to Matt Groening's space epic Futurama. Sure, it's only managed a little under a third of the episode count of Family Guy, but I just personally feel it's the stronger series of the two. In fact, I'd say it's a stronger overall series than The Simpsons, but that's a debate that walks a razor's edge. Whatever your personal beliefs about how all these series stack up against each other, though, I'd argue that Futurama just has a higher quality of storytelling behind it, with more episodes that can give you the feels in a significant way than any of its contemporaries. When you get right down to it, the show just has more heart than most others, and deserves to be recognized for that. In my opinion, that is. And each of you are welcome to agree or disagree as you see fit. And sure, The Simpsons and Family Guy and South Park may all have more of a back catalog, but Futurama is the one that stuck with people enough to be brought back not once, but twice, and is currently in the midst of its second revival on Hulu. That's where I'm going to end this part, though. Even though the video started a little slow, it's nice to have ended on a high note. Also, this one may be a bit shorter than the other parts of the year, but it's because it doesn't have either the recap or the SOS section. We did manage to cover pretty much the same number of shows, though. Almost done with the decade, with just one last part to go before the summary video, so make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss those. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, and stay tuned, as in cartoons. Later.